States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state, under God, indivisible. Sorry, my voice is going there. We'll start off with the consent items. Are there any issues on consent that anyone need to see? I think someone mentioned item number 5.
Yeah.
A little clarification. On item number 5, Troy, the questions are just, is it aggregate, is it one time, or is it per line item?
It's per line item or per expense as long as it has been approved in the budget.
So, yeah, if it's appropriated already. So if there's a $40,000 expense for furniture, he can execute.
Right.
And if it's $28,000 for paper, he doesn't need to call us. He just buys it.
Correct.
How does it currently work?
That it was up to 25,000.
Oh, I see, up to 25. Okay.
And these are budgeted items, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, okay.
That is correct.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, Chandrika?
No, that was my question,
Yeah,
too.
you have a question too? Anna? No? So, and no other issues with consent?
No.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. Go on to the regular agenda items. We start off with the consider approving Resolution 22-78, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for replacement of HVAC rooftop units for Westlake Academy and take appropriate action. Troy?
Mayor and Council, this is to start replacing our rooftop units on the original buildings on campus that were built in 2003. As you guys recall, we have been replacing roofs over the last couple of years, and then the rooftops are now in line to do that. So we have put this out to public bid. So this went out. We had 3 contractors submit bids, which are outlined in the agenda memo. And we got those bids back last week. And so we reviewed them, and we are comfortable going with the recommendation with LSI to provide the new units. One thing that I will mention is because the bids got back in last week and these documents had already gone out to council, based on the dollar amounts that LSI had submitted, we initially had budgeted or looked at just replacing 2, but when they came in with their cost, I think it was right around $100,000, and we had budgeted $150,000 in their major maintenance and replacement, and then we were receiving another $100,000 through the ESSER funds. And so I would recommend changing the resolution to read that we'll replace up to 4 units on top of PYP 1 and building that at the Westlake Academy campus that will not exceed $250,000.
Okay.
So we have the dollars there, but because the pricing came in where it came in, this allows us to purchase additional units, and they have to rent cranes and do all those things to do that. So that would be my recommendation.
And so only 3 people in the entire Dallas-Fort Worth wanted to bid on this job?
That the 3 people had submitted for this, yes.
Where did we post this?
It's posted in the Star Telegram, and then we call contractors as well.
And is LSI also the people that do our security?
That is correct. And they do our HVAC controls to go along with that.
Have you ever worked with them in the past?
We use them for our security system and also for our HVAC control system as well. And then I think as they grew over time, they created an HVAC division, so to speak.
So how many HVACs do we have on our
So
campus?
on the current PYP buildings, the 1 and 2 buildings, we have a total of 5. And then we have 3 on the MPH. You've got 4 on the gym building, and then you've got 3 on the secondary building, and then I believe you have 4 on the field house.
So are these like 5 or 10 ton units, or?
Yeah, they range from 5 ton up to 27 tons.
Whoa.
Yeah,
You said Fieldhouse had how many, sorry?
they have 4, I believe. Yes.
So have we, in the recent past, changed any other units, or this is the first time?
This is the first time we started changing out units, and it was just due to the repetitive costs that we were getting to maintain some of the units on the PYP building. We replace coils and fans and compressors. And given the age of the building, the lifespan of these typically are about 15 to 18 years. But due to our regular preventative maintenance that we do, and we maintain them very well, we extended that life. And so now we're just at a point where it's time to change out the units.
So the units are 20 years old?
Yeah, the other piece of this, due to the age of the unit, is getting parts. They're getting harder to find.
Yeah.
And so this also prompted us to go ahead and pull the trigger on this project.
So our oldest units are 22 years old?
That is correct.
Plus.
That is correct.
And these are the 3 or 4 older units that you're suggesting we replace right now?
Yes, that's correct. And they're on the PYP 1 and 2 buildings.
So you're saying replace 4 out of the 5?
4 out of the 5, that is correct.
Okay.
Because that's what we had budgeted. Because we were looking to do at least 2 each year, just to keep the budget, flat, so to speak, in the major maintenance and replacement. But because we got additional funds through the ESSER funds, and we have to use those by this summer, this was a good partner.
And is the 5th unit as old as the other 4?
Yes, it is.
And how much is it per unit cost-wise?
They're roughly about $60,000 apiece. And that's renting the crane and doing all those things.
Which is why I was asking, because
Yes.
for 1 unit, if they're going to charge us against next year for the replacement cost of the
Right.
crane and everything, is there any way we can either do it now?
We let us go back and negotiate that with them. I think there may be an opportunity to do that. And if we can do it within the budget, we'll certainly do it. And if it's going to cost us an additional 30 or 40 grand to do that, since we're getting the volume, then we'll come back to the council for that approval.
I think that'll be a good idea.
The other challenge we have with these units is there's probably about a 24 to 28-week lead time on these. And so if we can get them ordered now, we're shooting to have them in by end of summer, early August, based on, the supply chain.
So right before school starts?
Yes.
Sean Wilson, again, we're spending money over where you're at every day. Do you mind telling us, are things bad? Not hot, not cold? What's going on?
So I can tell you that, good evening, everyone, that over the summer, we've had some challenges with the heating and air conditioning system. And over the school year, we've come into some times when it wasn't working properly. So my understanding is that historically there have been some problems, and they've been pushing it along, and now is the time to actually make that replacement happen. And be that we do have some extra funds with the ESSER dollars. I am also recommending that we don't have to go through summers of times waiting for things to break, that we can get this taken care of and move on.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other? Great, thanks.
Do we need to amend what we originally said, because we said 4 units?
We're going to amend that resolution to stipulation at 4 units to Westlake Academy, and then amount not to exceed $250,000 needs to be said in the motion.
All right. Amend all units not to exceed,
250.
Resolution 2278 with the stipulation to add 4
But we'll check on the 5th too, right? Yeah.
HVAC units for Westlake Academy.
So we're going to replace the 4 that used
Okay.
to and not exceed.
okay. All right.
Perfect.
Any other concerns or questions on this right now? No? Chandrika, good point. Can I get a motion to approve the amended Resolution 2278 to replace all the units not to exceed 250,000?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. We're going to jump ahead real quick to number 8. Considering adopting ordinance 958, approving amendments to Chapter 98 Vegetation Division 2 Preservation Town of Westlake Code of Ordinances, and take appropriate action, continued from the December 5th meeting and Board of Trustees meeting. Ron.
Thank you.
Councilman Quinton had some issues, and you made some amendments to them. But I think overall, from reading what was presented, probably long-term need to rewrite the whole tree thing.
Yeah, and actually, we're working on a kind of a massive code rewrite of all of our development regulations to create a unified development code. And there's a lot of things like this that we can clean up in our codes. So we did strike out provision 2, which was talking about trees identified on an approved landscape plan. Didn't feel that was necessary in the scheme of the code. And there's other language we can add that specifies upon the issuance of a building permit for a new single-family residence in item 5, after speaking with Councilman Quint about this last week as well. So that would be my recommendation if we want to approve this tonight, is if I could just add that language stipulation onto item 5 where it ends with this chapter, and then say upon the issuance of a building permit for a new single-family residence, just to specify that application has to come in for a building permit in order to apply the building footprint waiver.
And then just to clarify, this is purely for undeveloped residential
That's correct.
property. They submit their permit, they can seek an exemption from the tree mitigation policy. Once they build, this becomes an established existing single-family home, in which case they become exempt anyway. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And is that normal not to have a tree mitigation policy for established housing?
That is normal. As a matter of fact, the state has effectively granted that to most single-family homes anyway.
Okay.
But for most cities, it's
So-
been normal.
For purposes of I appreciate the clarification on the application to establish what the footprint is, but what is the purpose of defining the footprint if they can build and just knock down trees anyway?
Well, on a new single-family lot, they wouldn't be able to, they would still have to protect trees that are outside of the building footprint.
But once it's an established residential
Oh.
property, they can knock them down anyway.
That's correct.
Right.
And it does create a bit of a loophole.
Right.
Where if somebody had a large piece of property, wanted to sell to a developer, they could technically take down all their trees before they sold, since they'd be exempt as a single-family resident.
Okay. But do we not want to address this, or?
I think that's something we could address. As a matter of fact, that issue came up a lot in a previous community I worked in, so we added kind of a backstop measure to keep that from happening on properties over a certain acreage where those trees, that single-family resident had to come in and request it. They had to abide by the stipulations of the tree ordinance.
Okay.
So it's a potential future action item to make that amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. We can do that.
Are there any other questions? All right. Can I get a motion to approve? Can I get a first?
Make a motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
All right, item number 7, considering approving Resolution 22-79, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement authorizing the purchase of modular classrooms for Westlake Academy and take appropriate action. Troy, come on down.
Mayor and Council, this is a follow-up in looking at our current older portables that are on campus. And we have been meeting last week. We had a couple calls last week to look at some additional options as it relates to whether we lease, buy used portables, but I want to kind of run through the PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll dive in. I've got a spreadsheet mapped out that kind of shows you the new portable cost, the setup cost, all those things, as well as the lease and a used option to go along with that. So what we're looking for tonight is approval of a vendor to supply us with portable buildings or modular buildings. Because the challenge we're going to run into now, if we want these modular units by August of 2023, we're running out of time on all these options, and they need time for programming and design. We need to commit to getting them in the assembly line process so they can get locked in, so they can start replacing them over that 60-day June and July timeframe.
Troy, first of all, our current portables are from 1999, right?
We bought them in 2011,
Used.
but we bought them used, and they were built around 2000, 1999 timeframe.
And 10 years old when we put them to use.
That is correct.
And the average lifespan with good care is about 15 years for these things.
Yeah, about 12 to 15 years as well.
And we got 23 into them.
Yes. So, Dr. White, if you could, next to my spot, there's this spreadsheet on paper. If you could pass that down, that'd be great. This way you guys can see that. So we worked on this weekend because we'd gotten some new information on Thursday and Friday as it relates to leasing portables, along with an option to build modulars and having them shipped here and put in place. So what we have what's proposed tonight, Ramtech, which is a 112 by 64 unit, gives you about 7,168 square feet. It gives you 6 classrooms and 4 offices. The cost per square foot is about $114. The base cost is about $757,000, and then the upgrades as far as the decks, the coverings, all those things that go along with that, the nicer siding versus the metal siding, those costs came up to about $63,000 and some change. The site work, that's on the high end. If you recall, last time we presented, we gave you a range of that site work, and so that's the high end of the range, and that was consistent all the way down. And then we got proposals from Mobile Modular. You guys can see those. They came in at about $7,058.
Hey, Troy, I'm sorry, dumb question. Is this for 3 of the portables or all 6?
Just for 3.
Just for 3?
The 3 older ones, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And what's the current square footage of those 3?
It's right at about,
There's
there's 700 square foot per classroom. And so
Okay.
there's 1,400 per building. And so there's 3 buildings, so a little over 3,000 square feet.
4,200, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 4,200. So, okay. So we'd be going from 4,200 up to potentially 7,000.
Yeah, there was a request from the head of school to see if we can get offices in that space, and what that did is it puts it all under one roof. If you remember the footprint, it had offices on the far, I guess the south end, and then you had a set of restrooms, and then you had the classrooms at the north end as well. And I think that was in y'all's packet.
So would the classroom size themselves be increased?
They'd be about the same.
About the same.
About 700 square feet. And that's the size of what the classrooms are in the secondary building.
So the excess space is on offices?
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
got it.
That is correct.
that's-
And restrooms.
Got it.
We expanded the restrooms. Right now, each portable has, each set of portables have one restroom, which has one fixture in each restroom. This new unit would have 3 fixtures per male and female. And so as you go down the list, you can see the sizes. We also looked at if we just needed the option, if we were just going to go with what we have, which are the 24 by 64, and there's the /3 units. That gives you the 6 classrooms, no office space, but it drops down to 4,600 square feet, and then you guys can see the pricing associated with that. Then we looked at, Tim did a lot of work for us on this, and I appreciate that help, Tim, without a doubt. And then we have an 84 by 68 unit, gives us a little bit more space, 6 classrooms, no offices, about 117 a square foot. And then you guys can see total cost on that was about $670,000. And then this Friday we met with a company name of the company is Brody. They're out of Austin, and they build modular buildings, homes, commercial buildings. And we looked at this. We just got information today on it. And the cost range on this for a 112 by 64, 6 classrooms, the 4 offices, still looking at 7,168 square feet, is roughly, the base cost would be about $2.1 million. And these units are built a lot better. They sit on the ground. They're not lifted on a frame, so to speak. But this is some new technology that's out there. Their timing would be pretty tight to make this work. as well. The rooms would be the fire sprinkler systems in them. They would have larger windows. The classrooms would have a full wall window as well. That would include some bullet-resistant film would be put on that to go along with that. The AC units would be indoors, and so they'd be a lot quieter as well. Dr. White, there is, at my spot, there is some renderings. If you want to pass those down as well, I appreciate it. So this is what they had proposed just as a first blush at this. And again, the $1.2 million is a very rough budget because, again, we met with them on Friday, and they pulled everything together over the weekend. So I want to be perfectly clear on that. But that gives you a feel for what they potentially could look like. And so they're more permanent structures, which I think at this point we'd have to look at how that type structure fits on the campus. How does it blend in with the aesthetics of the current buildings? One thing is they wanted to put the air conditioner units on the roof, so you have to shield those. But then you're standing on the three-story secondary building. You're looking down on those buildings. They would have to have all the programming done on these buildings by the first week in March to meet that August time frame. And that's if all the pieces fell in place. If weather falls in place, and they build these inside. Their facility is right outside of Austin, and it would be a tough stretch, in my opinion, to have all this knocked out. They have done a lot of residential homes. I think they're working on a home west of Austin that's roughly about a $3 million house, and using these modular units to construct it. It's pretty fascinating. I haven't gotten any response if they've done public schools. I was waiting for that before the meeting, but I didn't get it. But we went back, and so we looked at that as an option as well. Kind of moving forward down the spreadsheet, we looked at leasing, and so I projected a 5-year lease on the 24 by 64s and the 84 by 68. Again, these are all just classrooms, no offices, so you can kind of get a feel for what the lease would look like. And then we had one used option from Mobile Modular as well, and that's, again, just replacing what we currently have to go along with that. And to give you a feel, this is the floor plan that we were kind of running from. And so Brody also has this exact same floor plan as you saw in the renderings. And then this is just a recap of the cost if you guys were to approve the proposal from Ramtech. This is the site, and so it fits in within the blue line that you guys see where the older portables are located on the campus. This is the look that we would have. We would go with probably larger windows. Ramtech could also remove those units from the exterior of the building and put them possibly up in the attic, and then have little units on the units. There would be some units on the outside, but we could fence those in, put some landscaping around it.
But how does that impact the quote you showed us here?
We'd have to negotiate that. Because they have cost in there for AC units, and it's just they already have it all ducted inside as separate ductwork. So from these wall pack units, they were going to duct it anyway versus having it just on one side of the building like you see it today.
You'd mentioned, I think, a couple of items that differentiated the Brody product from Ramtech. Fire suppression, are we saying currently that's not?
That is in
quoted?
the Ramtech proposal.
It is?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So if you look back at the floor plan, you have a riser room located kind of on the upper half as well. And so you'd have that riser room that would bring in that wet system for the fire system.
So we currently have none in our portables now?
That is correct. That's correct.
You mentioned larger windows, bullet-resistant film, moving the AC units so they're not on the exterior walls. I mean, all those things are possible on the Ramtech product. We've not had the equivalent price comparison yet.
Right. So we put in about a $5,000 allowance for additional windows in the budget to kind of accommodate that. The air conditioner unit is really what we're lacking in the bullet-resistant glass. What I would recommend on portable buildings, so these are similar to the ones we have now, and these are the 24 by 64s. And so really if you create a more horizontal window and a lengthier window and raise it up a little bit, where it's not so much in the line of sight as somebody's walking by, would be my recommendation. And just do
Okay.
it the full length of the classroom. Would probably, I would imagine, provide a little bit more protection versus having a window that's, down at
So
waist level.
assuming some of these upgrades we're talking about are possible with the Ramtech, what are the other differences between the two? And for example, the life of the products, I mean, how does that differ?
You're, like the mayor had mentioned, the life of the portable is 12 to 15 years based on how you maintain it.
Right.
The Brody product, I'm not 100% sure, because again, we just met with them
Right.
on Friday, but I'm sure it's it would extend more than 15 years, I'd imagine. So.
Okay.
And then
I
now that
would
we're,
be- Go ahead.
now that we're talking about used mobile modulars, what is the anticipated lifespan of a used modular?
Great question, Dr. White. Right now, I can tell you, I talked to Mobile Modular about this. They sell used pretty frequently. They're down to about 17 that are currently available today. Now, tomorrow, that may change, but I would imagine, I think they started out with about 120 this past year, or in 2022, and now they're down to their last 17. And so what quality are those portables in, I'm not sure.
Well,
They probably
when-
don't have
When we
a...
visited with them, they refurbish all the used as new.
Right.
So I wouldn't view it, I feel like you're implying it's bottom of the barrel, but
Well-
they refurbish everything to a
Right.
standard level before they ship out.
Right. I wasn't sure. She didn't allude to that on the call, so, but great information to have. And do you know if they have a fire suppression system in them?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So there's some modifications that we'd have to make to those, certainly.
I have a question, Troy.
Yes.
What is the primary reason for the urgency on changing these portables to another portable set?
My understanding, it was concerned around safety of the portables, as well as the age of the portables, because these obviously have aged out. And so just the quality of the portables currently is the direction I had received from the council.
So we did hire a structural engineer who came back to us and said that there is a problem with the safety. Do we have a study done?
We had a study done by an individual that deals with portables on a regular basis, and they came out and did an assessment on it. And from a scale 1 to 10, they rated them, I think, about a 4.5 or a 5.
Which was done, I believe, last year
Yes,
when
that
we
is-
did the last study, right?
That is correct.
They gave them an average rating on the old portables.
Yes, that is correct.
So in that case, if we are talking about permanent solutions on those buildings of the ANS building, and I believe the new council has also seen the renderings on those buildings and everything. I believe the Bennett partners came in last meeting to show a submission on all of that. Why are we again trying to spend, 1.2, what was the amount?
Yeah, roughly about 1.2.
On 3 portables, right? And we have a total of 6. So that's about roughly, I would say, $2.5 million if we replace 6 eventually. Why are we doing that?
Well, I mean, I guess that's a question.
So, from our last conversation, the portables are nearing the end of their shelf life. We keep talking about the ANS building, but the ANS building is, in my view, years away. We don't have the money right now, and we're short about 12 million, 11 million right now. We would have to write a bond, and the bond would have to be in May or possibly next May, depends on what our debt ceiling is. And then from there, they go execute the bond, et cetera. You're at least 4 years away. My conversations with Sean Wilson says he needs swing space, and he feels that we need to urgently, from his perspective, replace a minimum the old portables. They're in not very good condition. They're not conducive to an educational environment. There's a lack of light right now in them. The current buildings, the ACs vibrate and become very distracting. Pieces have fallen off. They're nearing the end, and we're programmatically trying to plan ahead, in my view. So it's going to take us 6 months lead time to get rid of a set. And so they'll be coming on 24 years in the summer. And so, if Mr. Wilson, do you want to come up for a second and give us your explanation why you
I
need
am
it?
with all of you, and I'm sure we all are here for permanent solutions as well. I can say that. My kid is also in those portables, so personally, I would say I know the condition of those portables. My problem is we are not being able to raise funds for the permanent solution, which we've been talking for years, and after a really long time, I think previous council and this council have come to a point where we have a rendering for that building, which, Troy, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been years that we've never had that. Last conversation, and I think you were also in that meeting, where we had gone to the foundation to say that can they help us in fundraising. And Shelley at that point in time had said, "Show if you all can give us some renderings, something physical, something tangible to show to the community, we might be able to raise some funds." Troy, any discussions happened on that yet after the renderings?
So we're still working on all the construction documents as it relates to the two-story A&S building. So once those get complete, then
But
we'll
we
have
do
a full-
have the renderings, right?
Yes,
for
we
the
have
community?
the two-story renderings and
So
some
have
floor
we gone
plans.
back to the foundation at all? Any conversations for raising those funds anywhere in the community at this point that I'm not aware of?
I have not.
But Chandrika, I think you had a family thing where you missed the last meeting. That's when Bennett and Associates were here, and they did show us renderings. We sent them back to make some tweaks, some changes that I think both Sean Wilson and Troy asked for. So I hear your frustration. It's the same frustration
And
have.
I agree with you
But-
that
but-
the renderings were shown. I saw them later. I did go through the minutes in the agenda, and I was very glad that you all agreed and approved the renderings, and there were some tweaks that were asked to be made, and I think there were very good points that were raised. So great, we are working on that. This is a lot of money for a swing space which is already in place. There is a swing space. That's those portables which were created how many years back, Troy? 20 years back? And there is a lot of frustration in the community for portables. We are removing one set of portables, bringing in another set of portables by calling them modular buildings. It's the same damn thing. Maybe better because obviously things have become, but we are spending $2.4 million on a temporary solution. Eventually, we are moving the permanent solution to another 10 years.
So can I, just for clarification, what's the alternative? We keep them for the next 3 to 4 years till we resolve the financing and the logistics of a more permanent solution?
My suggestion is, at least let's go out to the community. That bond, I believe what I was told last, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't understand it completely, was that we can go out for that bond in November, maybe. Or if we can at least go out. If we get rejected, yes, then let's by all means, it comes back to us solving the solution problem. But at least let's make an attempt. The community want permanent buildings there. We know that. All of us know that. We all have spoken about this in various times and heard the community. They want those portables gone. Our kids are in it. My kids are in it. Kim's kids are in it. Anna, your kids are in it. David, one day, David's kids are in it too. All of our kids are in it. But we all want that permanent building there. And I know all of you want it. Why are we moving the needle further down by giving them more temporary solutions? And if you remember, we never wanted this, even with the previous council. We never wanted a temporary solution to this.
So Chandrika, I see where you're coming from. By spending money on modular buildings, there is going to be a knee-jerk reaction to some people in the public that we are simply replacing portables for new portables, that we are kicking the can down the road, that we're removing the urgency to build a permanent building, and that we're spending money that we don't need to spend. So there's going to be that public perception. And one of the reasons why we're talking about these modular buildings here in open council right now is because we're facing some end-of-the-line situations that cannot wait. As David mentioned, we are going to take, even in the best-case scenario, at least 3 or 4 years to build a permanent structure. And it's very unlikely that these 3 oldest portables, especially, much less all 6 of them, are going to make it that long.
It's
And
just
then
coming at a-
second, let
sorry.
me just finish 3 things. So time-wise, these old portables are not going to last much longer. 2, there's a consensus between both the council and the head of school that the oldest of these portables really need to say bye-bye, because they are not buildings in which teachers nor students should be learning in. And to be frank, for many years now, even 5 years ago, nobody wants to use those bathrooms in these portables. They all go to the NYP building to relieve themselves. And then number 3, as we look forward over the next decade, as we invest in Westlake Academy, which is the #1 recruitment for both residents and corporations to locate in our town, this school is the huge attraction. This is the crown jewel of our school. And over the next 10 years, I can imagine that we're going to be making capital investments to improve the campus, not only in the Art and Science building, but also in PYP and NYP. And the thought is that these modular buildings that are higher quality, even though I'm very interested in these used mobile modulars, that lifespan will be able to serve as flexible space throughout the PYP capital improvement projects, NYP, as well as this DP project. And then later on, provide even more office space at that point.
May I jump in? So, look, this is you hadn't been here all that long. This has been an emotional issue. They were supposed to go away years ago, and the can keeps getting kicked down the road. The thought of replacing these portables with more portables it doesn't make sense to me. And, as I think about this, I have an opinion, but I don't know if my opinion represents 5% of the people or 95% of the people. And, what I'd love to see this council doing is what do our parents, what does our staff, head of school, your administration, parents, what do they think about this? And I'm just being honest. Replacing these portables with new portables does not sound like a good idea to me. But notwithstanding, if there's safety issues that we need to talk about, I've been in the portables, understand, we need to have that conversation. I just feel like we haven't fully had that conversation to understand, regardless of the cost. If there's a safety issue, we need to go. But I feel very uneasy replacing them with, they look very similar to what we have.
And I see what your point is, Kim. I can't disagree with you. My biggest point tonight is that even if we were to go to the residents to ask what their feedback is, I believe that the residents want us to come to them with a very holistic plan on how we will build permanent buildings and how any potential modular buildings will fit in that plan holistically. What bothers me about this particular conversation is that it's kind of in isolation with just the modular buildings. I'd much rather have a conversation more holistically where we're passing and pursuing the permanent buildings and using the modular buildings as a crutch to get us through the steps.
I agree, and if you took this little bit in a snapshot, it would look a little bit distorted, but the reality is Bennett and Associate thinks they can get a structure up within 3 years, like 2.5 years is what they said. Permanent. I asked Mr. Wilson, I said, hey, what's more important, expanding on other structures or building the Science and Arts building? After the meeting, he said absolutely Science Arts. Is that still accurate? Okay. So, and quite frankly, if we had extra money in the coffers, this would be a no-brainer. We would build the new structure. Unfortunately, we're a little bit shell-shocked as a council because we discovered we're in a bigger hole than we ever thought. So now we're trying to make decisions based upon being frugal and a limited budget. So, of course, if we were flush, we'd be building buildings. So, but I agree with you, Chandrika. I agree with you, Kim. And Sean, I 100% hear what you're saying. I mean, we don't want our kids in unsafe stuff. It's just, I wish we had a magic wand and we could just get a building and not have to deal with it. So,
I am so glad you all agree with me on this, really. And I'm thankful to Kim for saying that also. If it's a structural issue, I think each one of us here will support each other on saying there is a problem. If it's a structural issue, none of us kids should be in there. My personal kid is in there too, so I can tell you, I wouldn't want. But I think we have to have a much more discussion. The community needs to be a little more involved. I agree with Kim on that. This is a conversation which is very emotional for these parents at the school. They need to know more than just us having a discussion in 1 or 2 meetings and saying this is what we're going with. Moving a portable from one portable to another is not the solution. We didn't have the funds. We knew that last year as well, which is why we were trying to see what we can. I wish we have the funds. I think all of us would have agreed and signed this off the year we had the funds, but we just don't have it. So let's go out to the community and see if there are ways of getting the funds.
I just want to just add a little bit because I think we're all throwing out some really important points, and I think we're stuck with this dichotomy of replacing what we feel is inadequate, it's substandard, it's not safe, to Chandrika and others' points about why are we spending money on replacing like for like when there's a bigger picture that we really do want to strive for and achieve. And I think, Tim, you said this, or one of you said this, we're making these decisions in isolation. And so when someone says, oh, look at council approving more portables for portables, we're not taking into context that bigger picture of what is the progression? Why are we doing this first step? And maybe this is something we need to, step back and revisit and ask ourselves, what is this master plan for this community? And if the end game is getting to permanent structures for arts and science, secondary buildings, PYP, et cetera, if this is a viable stepping stone in that process, I think what we're saying, everybody's saying, is then that can be, a valid, stepping stone. We should be projecting out what our financial needs are. We should be calculating exactly what our capacity to issue debt is. And so when we look at this pro forma, we just say to ourselves, look, here's what the master plan is going to cost us. Here's how much we can issue in bonds incrementally, at these various phases. Then I think we can take this holistic view, as Anna's saying.
That's what I'm saying.
And make a decision. But, yeah, it's hard to sit here with just one agenda item on portables and say, yes, let's just buy.
Can I just add one more thing? Mr. Wilson, your immediate need was the art labs.
Dr. Wilson.
Sorry. Oh, yes. Dr. Wilson, congratulations. Really, well done. Your immediate need were the art labs and the science labs, right? This still doesn't address any of that yet. Please, I request the council to relook this.
So,
I
Dr.
really do.
Wilson, can we ask you, and I mean, look, again, I have an opinion, we all have an opinion. Like, what are your thoughts on your advice to us?
Right. So I think one of the conversations we had at the beginning of the school year was about the master plan for the campus and where do we start first and then where do we end, and also the phases in which that would happen. And I do agree that there should be some planned action about how we will get to that space. What is our capacity as a charter school? And then where do we start in this process of moving forward? I think part of the challenge is that we do have teachers who don't want to be in the portables. We have students who don't want to be in the portables. We have, when we're making choices about where teachers go for instruction, of course we avoid the portables as much as we can, only because it is the place that causes the most amount of friction on campus. So I do understand that where we are trying to get to is a space that says, how will we use this space so that it makes sense in this current iteration? And I believe in this current iteration, I talked a little bit about swing space, but I also talk about like how many times are we going to decide or when and where we make this change. The idea of going forward was one, we are limited on space overall. Just as an example, in the gymnasium, which is where the foundation currently resides, that office space will be commandeered as of this summer. So where do we put those personnel for that work? Secondly, where do we put our art teacher who's now, if we want IB art, how do you put IB art on a cart and carry it from one class to the next? I think that's one of those things that we don't think about, and as important or maybe as extracurricular as art could seem, it is actually an integral part of the diploma program. Secondly, when we talk about science classes, I think in a new iteration we have an opportunity to outfit portable classrooms in a way that makes science more relevant and more alive in a new or a refurbished modular space that we don't have at this point. So when we look at our science scores, when we look at our math scores, the reason they are where they are is because we are doing a lot of things by moving instructors from one place to the next. So my argument for the now is that if we don't start today and we kick it down the road, so truthfully, anything that we want to do on that campus, when it comes to these modular buildings, won't happen until 2024. So we're going to be 18 months away before something.
We could get a used one, and it could be here in a couple of weeks. That's not true.
Well, I'm just saying, if we are going through this process, and if it doesn't happen at some point, if there's a trigger point, whatever that trigger point is, and whatever that trigger point is, we need to make sure that we are not pushing this down the road, that it becomes not probable for the current school year.
There's a 6-month lead time on new construction modular. I think the consensus is, why would we buy new? But used, there is no lead time on it.
Okay.
But I think the bigger thing is, if we're going to talk about modular, why have we not talked about financing options on what you really want? I mean, and Bennett and Associate, they said 2.5 years. So let's say 3 on the outside if we said go now. I think we got to table this and circle back, because it's going to be difficult to go to the town and go, here's more modulars, without talking about a permanent structure. I think it's going to be permanent and maybe modular behind it. But if it's just modular, this is going to get ugly.
Yeah, and actually I agree with you, but I think that we have time in Q1 and Q2 to come up with a game plan, looking, as David said, with financing, what we can carry, looking at what Tim said with how we can finance it with Bennett Partners. So if we do that game plan, we could have options open to us as long as we don't box ourselves in with new and the deadline for December 2022.
So when I'm speaking about a timeline, it is purely on new construction, not about what's in the used market. I'm not aware of how that component worked. So I think where I'm just concerned is just how do we will continue to educate our kids. That is our obligation. That is something that we are committed to do. We will do it to the best of our ability, given whatever we're given. The idea is, how do we make it in a safe environment so that our students can, one, feel that they are valued in this process, because they are the ones that are churning out the scores that we want. They are the ones who are actually receiving the education in the classroom, and also for our instructors, because they are the ones who are frontline in this work. So whatever the decision is, that is the prerogative of the council, and I definitely will respect that. I just want you all to understand and know that it's our kids, yes. How fast we get there, I think that is a conversation for a longer discussion. And then what are those financing options? I think that's also something else to take into consideration. And I just want to say thank you.
Troy, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Have we ever looked, and I don't know if it is possible, in refurbishing those older portables to look better? There is an industry of refurbishing older homes. Is there a possibility of refurbishing them, maybe making the windows bigger, making them look? That would be a couple of $1,000s, I believe, if it is possible.
I wouldn't recommend that, given
No.
the age of the building and when they were built, because they were built under different building standards as well, and they have increased the building standards over time.
So there's no...
Yeah, so I wouldn't recommending refurbishing. You would probably have to gut the whole thing and do a lot of work to it.
Got it.
Without
Okay.
a doubt.
Just thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Dr. Wilson, I'm sorry, I'll be a little slow here. Do you want to replace these portables with portables because it's holding back our children, it's holding back the teachers? Help me articulate that.
So ideally, no. I don't want to replace portable for portables.
Okay.
I would love to have permanent structures on the campus. Given an opportunity, how do we get there? And that's really, I think that's what we're all faced with, is how do we get there? So where do we start, and then how do we move forward?
If we get to the point where we can finance the arts and science expansion and potentially the other secondary buildings, a 3-story building, do you see a long-term use for these portable buildings? They're newer buildings that are brought in. We talk about flex space. We've talked about, options.
So if I may go to the latter conversation, and that's the one that we had, was that Thursday or Friday? I don't recall, with Brody and Friday, sorry. On Friday, I think something along that line, which could be converted into dining space and other multipurpose use. I could see something along that line. I think if we're talking about the same model of modular for the same model, I don't see that as a longer term investment. Whereas I do see the conversation on Friday as such.
What's the conversation on Friday
So
you're
there's
referring to?
So the Brody conversation regarding their structure and its ability to withstand 195 mile per hour winds, the larger windows, just that kind of space, I think as a longer term would be what I would look for.
And it could be built with the intention of being a cafeteria.
That is correct.
And it could be built with the intention of having a second or third story.
That is correct.
It's just a stronger structure.
It's not really a modular.
Yeah, it's built in a
Today's
factory.
vernacular.
Correct.
Yeah,
I mean,
I like that.
So I don't know if I answered.
No,
your
I
question.
think, I think it does help because we don't obviously get a lot of opportunity to sit other than in an open public meeting to talk about these things. So I think it's always useful to have these discussions. And I think, as I think Kim has said, the portables as an issue has been kicked around for many, many years as a council. It's not been solved because it's not been easy to direct funds required to do something without jeopardizing either a long-term, strategic vision versus something else. But yeah, I think, just kind of circling back on this point, I mean, I guess what we don't want to do is put good money into solving a short-term problem and then finding out that there's no long-term use for what these would be.
I would opine that we consider replacing a minimum the older portables tonight. If we build a brand-new building, we can sell the new buildings. There's a book value to them to another group of people in the future. But what we're doing is, we learned this lesson with the fire station. For years, they kicked this can down the road in the fire station. It chinched and chinched and chinched. And then we had to replace the fire station in an emergency because it was falling apart and some issues with it, right? And as a result, we had to quickly go build a fire station and write a bond for that. I'm a fan of programmatically handling things. To me, this is part of a first step of changes to the school. This town's had 2 fires last March and April in modern homes with modern sprinklers that were total losses. We have no fire system in this at all, and we have kids in it. And to me, it's something that we need to fix, and the risk that you're assuming as you go forth on this aging building that's past 8 years past service life, you're assuming a lot of risk. And so it's not just good money after bad, it's assuring and protecting what we have, and that's kids. And so we want an environment where kids want to learn and teachers want to show up to work. Because if I put a teacher in here, they'll quit on me. And it goes to retention. And portables are not desirable. They're not desirable at all. A permanent building is. But in my assessment, we are 4 to 5 years away from really ever doing and executing and building a building. And those 4 or 5 years is a lot of risk. It's a lot of loss of teachers. And it's a lot of kids who are going to dread going into the dark rooms. And if we have a chance to put a little money out, to at least to solve the older ones, it becomes a viable issue. And, it's a necessary solution. It's a step, though, to show that we're going to put money into some type of infrastructure. We don't have the $10 million. I talked to the foundation this past weekend. It's going to take them a while to raise any money. There's donor fatigue that happens over time. And we raise a lot of money for the school already. So I've been in this town for 10 years. I've been hearing this solution for 10 years, and I've heard hey, I'll just go raise money and we'll solve it that way for years. And it never comes to fruition. We raise a lot of money, we do a lot of good things, but most big things in government happen programmatically. We issue a bond, and we don't have the room in the next 18 months to issue a major bond like that on our debt cap. We received a briefing 2 months ago about that. And we've been talking about portables, upgrading them for a long time, and we need to do that. And so we have some really dilapidated buildings, and they've fallen apart, and we just need to make sure that we have the ability to move forward, and we're going to need some of these buildings as we move forward, even for A&S. And we will have a strategic plan, but the ability to not have the master plan done today should not prevent us from reaching a conclusion tonight that, yeah, we do. We're in a tight time frame. If we want to do something, we have to do it in the next couple of weeks so we can get it done this summer. Because otherwise, we'll be looking at 18 months from now. And these things are already 23 years old. They'll be 24, 25 years old.
All right. Well, used ones we can have in 2 months. But quick question, Dr. Wilson. if we built the new building, the arts building, would you need 6 portables still, or would 3, because 3 of them are good, 3 of them are bad. So if we build a new structure that we all want, that's $6.5 million, and that our guys said they could get it done in 2.5 years, would you only need 3, or would you still need 6?
So assuming the current population, so we would just be exchanging the number of classrooms for the number of classrooms. So we're not really gaining anything. So yes, there will be possibly some use of 3 portables, and without having gone through strategically figuring it out, we'd probably use it more for office space or other kind of ancillary uses.
Because here's how I look at it. We build a three-story structure. That should eliminate the need for the 3 dilapidated, if I can't say that word right, the 3 bad ones.
Yeah.
So maybe that's how we make the 3 bad ones go away, and we suck it up for 2.5 years, and we get fires. I'll be more than happy to donate a fire system in those 3 buildings if that's an issue. No pain, no gain. I mean, I want to get to a permanent structure, and that's what I'm really interested in. And I think it's bad optics replacing portables with portables.
So I wanted to take a minute just to address what the mayor was saying. I want to tell you, Mayor, and also the public, that I'm completely committed to creating safer spaces by this fall, just like everybody else here wants to. The question is really how to do it. And I feel that with the option of using a used portable, which is refurbished to be like new, as Tim had said, we might be able to buy ourselves time to have an actual plan with financing and construction and a very clear pathway for the public. Because like you, I've been in this town for about a decade or more, and I've seen the portable diagrams and renderings that were provided back in 2016. I thought these things were going to be built by 2020, but they went poof. So I think if we have a very strong, well-documented pathway to build these portables, that's the way our town expects us to come to them with the question of should we support a bond for this capital improvement project. And I think by going the route of a used modular building, it buys us time in Q1 to create those financial and game plans for a building. And it gives us the best of both worlds, a very holistic plan, new buildings this fall for classes to start in August, and also a much better story and game plan to provide the public, which they deserve, I think.
Any more questions? You want to take a quick break before we get to the next section and give people a chance to get some water and stuff like that, and we can
Sure.
continue with the briefing?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll take a 10-minute break real quick here.